Welcome to all of you in this course on blockchain and its application. So, this is a course that myself Shondip Chakraborty and my colleague Professor Shomik Shural are going to teach jointly in this semester. So, in this course that is going to give you a broad overview about what blockchain is and its different functionality, its architecture as well as different use cases which we are going to cover as a part of this course. So, today is the introductory lecture. So, today I am going to discuss about the basic primitive of blockchain, that what broadly we are going to cover as a part of this course, and at the same time going to give you an example about what blockchain is and in which particular cases you are going to use blockchain, or which particular use cases are more suitable for different types of blockchain applications. So, let us start our journey on this interesting topic on blockchain, which has now see a lot of hype from the community, both from the research community as well as from the industry. So, people are talking about blockchain, and very recently as per the Google metrics, that blockchain is one of the topic which sometimes are searched more compared to the popular topics like artificial intelligence and deep learning. So, you can see there is a lot of hype about blockchain, and people are talking about different popular blockchain applications including the cryptocurrencies, and that way this concept has been a kind of very interesting one which people have started looking upon. So, to start with our journey on blockchain, I will start with the different types of myths which are roaming around on this particular topic of blockchain, and in today's class we are going to talk about a use case which is a kind of decentralized application that can be built up using blockchain. So, that will give you a kind of fair idea about the different application use cases where blockchain can be utilized. So, these are the kind of keywords for today's lecture. So, let us start with the different myths which are around blockchain. So, in the first class itself I would like to make you aware about this kind of myths, because if you just start with a simple Google search about blockchain, you will get millions of articles possibly, and different articles defines blockchain in different way, and they basically try to quantify blockchain as a kind of stellar technology which can possibly solve all the problems in our life. But just like any other technology, blockchain also has its advantages as well as limitations, and this the purpose of this particular course is to make you aware about those kind of advantages that you can get using blockchain, and at the same time the type of limitations which are there on top of this particular technology. So, the first myth which roam around on this particular idea of blockchain is that Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrencies are equivalent to blockchain. So, whenever I go to give a talk on blockchain, majority of the times I heard this query that, well, the governments are banning cryptocurrencies, the government is not allowing to trade using Bitcoin, then what is the use of learning blockchain? So, many of the times people actually mess up these two concepts, the blockchain and the cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin. So, on the first day itself I would like to make it clear that blockchain is not equivalent to cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So, these are kind of two different technology, rather what you can say that blockchain is the technology which is being used to design Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. So, you can just make it similar to like that the cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin is a particular electricity equipment, and blockchain is the electricity which is powering the equipment. So, if you just want to have a kind of debate about one of the equipment, that does not mean that you need to also have a debate on the technology which is providing energy or providing power to that particular application. So, indeed there are multiple different applications or numerous other applications around blockchain which are not related to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and rather in this particular course we are going to focus on many of such different applications which are not related to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Even today itself I am going to introduce you with one of the application of blockchain which is not related to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. So, that way these two technologies are completely different, rather as I have mentioned that Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency is the application and the blockchain is the technology that is providing power, providing support in the development of cryptocurrencies. So, that way learning blockchain will give you many perspective, will help you to understand that in which particular application you can apply this technology to get a solution out of it. It is not like that we are not going to learn cryptocurrency, we will also learn a part of cryptocurrency because it is one of the foundational application behind blockchain. To understand the true power of blockchain, you need to understand that what it can provide in terms of cryptocurrency or that kind of decentralized money or decentralized currency architecture, that we are obviously going to learn. But as I have mentioned that because this course is not focused on cryptocurrencies, rather it is more focused on blockchain. So, that is the reason we are not going to discuss about any debate which is around cryptocurrencies, like why cryptocurrency is not legal or how I can make it legal. And in a consequence that if you are thinking of that, well, you want to trade cryptocurrencies and if you learn this particular course that you help in trading cryptocurrency, it is not like that. We are not going to touch upon many of the economic aspects which are behind the market aspects of cryptocurrency, and that way do not kind of mix up these two concepts together, that blockchain is equivalent to cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So, this is the kind of first myth, so just keep it in mind. And at the same time the second myth that we have around blockchain is that anything and everything in the world can be solved using blockchain. So, I keep on hearing this kind of statement that, well, whenever there is a kind of fraudulent activities or there is a kind of corruption, we can possibly utilize blockchain to solve that fraud or solve that corruption. So, it is not like that. So, blockchain is again nothing but a technology which has been invented by different people from different domains, from the cryptographer, from the computer scientists, from the people who are there in the behind the economic model of blockchain. But it is not like that any technology in the world can be or any problem in the world can be solved using blockchain. So, it has its own limitation as well. So, as I have also mentioned earlier. So, that way blockchain is good. You can solve many of the interesting problems using blockchain, but it is not like that you can change the society using blockchain. Well, so you need to carefully think of that which is the application that can be potentially get benefited by applying blockchain as a technology for its solution, but it is not like that you can apply blockchain in any of the problem that you get. Well, so that way. Well, it might also happen that you have a problem which is related to these fraudulent activities or corruption or something like that. It might always happen that there can be a better technology which can solve your problem and you do not require a blockchain there. So, always remember that there is as such no free lunch. So, it is not like that you can invent a technology and there is no shortcoming of that technology. So, it can only provide the good. That will never happen. So, that way from that particular perspective, you should always keep in mind the trade off, that what is the good thing of blockchain and at the same time what is the bad things in blockchain. So, both the pros and the cons you should keep it in mind, and accordingly you should understand or you should analyze this trade off to understand whether blockchain can be the best technology to solve your problem. If blockchain is the best technology to solve your problem, then go with it. Otherwise, think of that what can be potentially a better solution to solve your problem. Well, so that is my suggestion to all of you who are going to take this course to learn blockchain and trying to apply blockchain in certain problem. Before applying blockchain to certain problem, think carefully whether blockchain is the best solution to solve your problem or not. Well, and the third myth that is pretty interesting, that many of the cases, many of the articles or many people I have seen, they mess up between blockchain and a distributed database. Well, so people think of that when I have a distributed database, potentially I would be able to replace a distributed database with the help of a blockchain, and it is not like that. Blockchain is not at all a distributed database. Well, so it is just like a kind of replicated data structure. We will learn about its structure in the next in the subsequent classes, but blockchain is not a distributed database. So it is not like that. If you learn blockchain, you do not need to do a course on database. These two particular technology, the database technology and the blockchain technology, both have their own applications. So that way, for certain applications your database might work good, or even sometime a distributed database might work good. For some other application, blockchain might be useful. So it is not like that. Whenever you see a distributed database, you can immediately replace that distributed database with the help of blockchain. So here also you need to carefully think of that what you can put in a blockchain, what is the overhead to put that particular thing on the blockchain, and how you can utilize blockchain better to solve your problem. So it is not like that you can store any data on a blockchain. So it has its limitation. You cannot or if you just plan to store large files on a blockchain, that is not potentially a good use case for blockchain. Well, so that way it is also necessary to understand the scope and limitations of every technology, and accordingly try to apply it to solve your specific problem. So these are the kind of myths which are roaming around blockchain, and as I mentioned that if you simply do a Google search, you will see that 20 stellar applications of blockchain, or 50 different problems where blockchain can completely solve. It is not like that all these problems the blockchain is the best solution. Well, there are problems for which you can apply blockchain, but again you need to carefully think of, you need to carefully analyze the trade off of it and accordingly try to apply this blockchain. So from here, as I have mentioned that, well, blockchain is not equivalent to God. It is not like that you can solve any problem using blockchain, right? But obviously it has its own use case. Well, so here comes the question that why this course? So why we are going to this course? So the objective of this course is broadly to understand the technology better, so that you can avoid all these hypes and myths and apply blockchain as a solution at the right place where it is really needed. So comes the question that what is the right place? Well, so let us have our journey on this course to understand that what is that right place. Well, so to start with, the terminology which roam around across blockchain is something called a decentralization. Well, so let us try to understand that what decentralization means and why I would like to apply a technology, or I would like to have a stellar technology to solve the problem of decentralization. So to start with, we will take a particular use case where blockchain is actually very much useful. So the application of supply chain management. So let us take an example and let us have our journey on this example to understand that what is the potential problem which are there inherently in supply chain management, and why a solution like applying blockchain in a decentralized architecture is best for it. Well, and in this process we are also going to learn, also going to understand what this word decentralized truly means. So let us take the supply chain architecture in a petroleum industry. So if you look that how the petroleum industry work with different kind of products and different kind of middleman in the entire end-to-end path. So it all starts with the crude purchase. So purchasing the crude oil, then once the crude oil is purchased, then this crude oil is transported to certain crude storage where it is being stored, and from the storage it is being sent to the refinery for refining the crude oil. After refining the crude oil, you get different type of products like the petrol, diesel and the other subsidiary products which you are getting from the crude oil, and these products are distributed to different retailers. Well, so that is the kind of a very simplified view of the end-to-end supply chain for petroleum industry. Now, this, if you just try to look into that, who are the players in this entire end-to-end petroleum supply chain? So, let us try to look into a use case for India. Well, so if you like, if you just try to debug that this petroleum supply chain in the context of India, so the entire thing comes under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and under that ministry there are certain players which are at the upstream direction. So, upstream direction means they are mostly in the exploration and the production of the crude oil side. So, they take the crude oil and then they produce or say they basically explore the location where you can get the crude oil, and they then supply that crude oil to the corresponding storage, and there are the downstream operators or the downstream players who basically refine the crude oil and then take care of marketing different products which are basically extracted from the crude oil. In between the upstream and the downstream operators, there are different other industry bodies which are associated with this entire petroleum supply chain. So, if you just look into the different upstream and the downstream operators or the players who are there and the different industry bodies who are associated with this petroleum supply chain, the list is pretty large. So, if you look into the upstream the companies who does this exploration and production, you have this ONGC, OVL, Oil India Limited, and different other private enterprise and companies. So, that way there are different players or different companies which are participating in this upstream supply chain of petroleum industry. In the same way, in the downstream direction, there are different refining and marketing companies. Say for example, there is Indian Oil. So, Indian Oil who actually does the refining and produce the product, and then CPCL, BRPL who takes care of the marketing. Then Bharat Petroleum again they takes care of the refining, whereas NRL they takes care of the corresponding marketing. Then Reliance India they take care of both refining and marketing. Then there is Hindustan Petroleum who takes care of refining, and the MRPL they correspondingly do the marketing. So, these are the different downstream industry bodies which are there. And at the same time there are multiple other industry bodies which are associated with this petroleum supply chain, like the Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell, the Center for High Technology, PRCA, Petrofed, Oil Industry Safety Directorate, Petroleum India International, and many more. Well, so that way you see that if you look into the end-to-end petroleum supply chain management, at every level there are different operators, different bodies, some of them are government, some of them are private, and as a consequence the entire system is very much complicated. Well, so the different companies they purchase the crude oil from different others, and then they take it to the market. Well, and there is this demand and supply requirement based on which they have to take a kind of planning of doing that entire thing and so on. Now, if you just think of that what makes a petroleum supply chain successful, so there are multiple requirements. So, first of all I need to minimize the material procurement, I need to maximize the manufacturing of capacity and sales, I need to meet the demand numbers, then I need to respond quickly to the market opportunity by purchasing the production shortfall from other players. So, that is very interesting, because say for example, whenever one downstream company say Hindustan Petroleum has a shortfall, they can possibly take it from the Indian Oil, well, and can make the corresponding supply. So, that way these industry bodies they also do a kind of cross business among themselves. Then the interesting fact here is that the objective of each of these production unit which is there in this end-to-end supply chain, their objective would be to maximize their individual profit, individual throughput and its margin. Well, so that way if you just look into the requirements of this kind of complete supply chain management, you will see that to have a kind of proper supply chain architecture, all these different players need to coordinate with each other. Well, so I need a kind of strong coordination among all these players at different level of the supply chain, starting from the production of the crude oil to its distribution, then refining, then marketing, and finally going to the that final retail. In this entire end-to-end part, I need a kind of strong coordination. So the question comes that who is going to establish this coordination, because here you see that the basic architecture or basic or the fundamental structure of this entire supply chain is that I have different organizations and each organization try to maximize their profit margin. So, everybody is sharing that common product, the crude oil, and then the products which are being produced from the crude oil. Well, they are doing business on top of that, but everyone has their objective. So, they are the competitors of each other. Everyone tries to do a kind of proper manage a kind of proper demand supply and so on. Well, so that way, if I can design a kind of architecture or design a kind of platform through which they can coordinate with each other in a successful way, that means they can get the information about demand, they can understand that well this particular company or this particular organization has this much of free petrol or free diesel that I can possibly procure to meet my requirement. So, if I can share such kind of information among them, then I can possibly better do a kind of management of this the product in the end-to-end supply chain. So, this is basically a kind of decentralized architecture where you have multiple different business organization, everyone has their own governing structure, everyone has their own policy of doing the marketing, doing the business, but at the end of the day they are basically working on a common product, working on a common marketplace. And that way, if they can collaborate with each other or coordinate with each other in some way, everyone might get benefited out of it. Well, so this is the kind of decentralized architecture that we are talking about, that I do not have a kind of central body or central coordinator who is coordinating all these different players in the supply chain. Well, rather it is like that everyone is taking their own decision in an independent way, rather each of these organizations have their own policy of maximizing the profit, doing the business and so on, and they are in a common marketplace. Now, with this kind of decentralization architecture, the question comes that how do we obtain the real time information from the stakeholders? Well, now here you can think of multiple different solutions. You can possibly think of that, well, we will have a web based portal where I will put up all the information that who has how much of crude oil, what is the current price of the crude oil, how much barrels of crude oil currently I have, how much barrels of petrol and diesel that have been produced and so on. So that can be one possible solution. But here comes the problem of decentralization. So, the problem is that what is the guarantee that the information submitted to that portal is correct? So, the first problem is that who is going to manage that portal. So, as I have mentioned that in this entire business I do not have any central coordinator who is making this entire coordination or finding out an algorithm for meeting the demand and supply in the global marketplace. Well, so rather it is working like a complete decentralized way. Now, when it is working like a complete decentralized way, in that space I do not know that, or we cannot guarantee that who is going to maintain that web portal, or even if I am submitting certain information to the web portal, what is the viability or what is the guarantee that information is correct? Who is going to validate that? Well, I will have no way to validate it. So, that is the kind of my requirement. And another problem which might arise, that what if someone denies that information later on. So, if someone may say that, hey, I have not submitted that information to that web portal, someone else has intruded me and they have submitted that information. So, how we are going to prove that it is not that someone else has submitted the information, rather you have submitted the information to this portal. So, this is the kind of challenges, the kind of problem that we have. Well, so we need a decentralized solution. That means no one trusts each other, but they should cooperate with each other. So, that is the kind of requirement which I have. So, to solve this problem, blockchain is the answer. So, blockchain can specifically solve this particular problem of decentralization in this context. Well, so in the next class we are going to see that how blockchain can solve this problem, but the problem that I wanted to highlight is that because of such kind of decentralization, such kind of competition among individual stakeholders, where every stakeholders runs their own business, they have their own policy of managing the stuffs. So, the entire system becomes complex, and you do not have any central coordinator which will say that, hey, this much of barrel of crude oil has been delivered to company X. So, if you have a shortcoming, if you have a shortfall, then you take that additional barrels from company X. Well, no one is going to provide that information to you, but if you get that information somehow in a reliable way, in a realistic way, then that can help the business of everyone, that can help the entire business platform to grow together. So, that way my architecture is complex. I have different players who have their own objective, who have their own policy, but at the end of the day, if they can coordinate with each other, they can possibly return a better benefit not only for themselves, but for the society as a whole. Well, so this is somewhere where we can apply blockchain, and in the next class we are going to see that how we can apply blockchain in this context. So, just to summarize for today's class, so what we have seen that we have this concept of decentralization. So, decentralization basically means that I have a network of different players. So, these different players can be different businesses, enterprises, commercial establishment, government or private bodies, or even the individuals. Everyone has their own interest in this among these players. They want to fulfill their goal, but the interesting fact here is that they do not trust each other. Well, although they want to collectively fulfill their goal, but they do not trust each other, and because they do not trust each other, so comes the problem. Well, and as you have seen that if they cooperate with each other, the society as a whole can get benefited. Well, so that way the basic crux behind the design of this blockchain is to have something called trustless decentralization. So, I want to have a decentralized architecture in a trustless setup. Well, so where the individual stakeholders do not trust with each other, but still they can coordinate, and there is my answer, which is blockchain. So, that is all for this class, and in the next class we are going to see that how this particular architecture is actually going to solve my problem of having this kind of trustless decentralization in the marketplace. Okay, thanks for attending today's class. So, in the next class we are going to take it forward from here.